This is an all-flash NAS by TerraMaster. It's the F8 SSD. This little thing is not much bigger than an external hard drive. Realistically, it's about the same size. And here shortly, you'll see why I have this just laying around. I'm working with TerraMaster to review this all-flash NAS, network attached storage device. My home lab has a lot of storage in it. Not much of it is flash storage. And that's for a pretty good reason, but we'll get into that in a minute. So this little guy holds 8 NVMe SSDs. What can I say? It's quiet, it's compact, it's super fast if you're set up for the speed, and it has its limitations. Sounds like the future, right? I wouldn't go that far. Not yet. When I think network attached storage, I think long-term storage. Spinning disk drives, maybe some flash storage for caching. NAS devices nowadays have turned into a full-blown server in some cases. Like this guy back here, my Zima Cube, has a full PCIe port on it where I can slap a GPU in it and run AI workloads or virtual machines or whatever I want. So this one is quite different. It has no spinning disks. It is all flash. So taking it apart is pretty easy. It's one screw on the back that comes off, and the whole case comes off around the actual NAS. This is actually my first device that has DDR5 RAM. But let's talk about the specs of this guy real quick. So this does come with an Intel N95 processor, which is 4 cores, 4 threads, more than enough to do storage-based stuff. 8 gigs of DDR5 on board, which is completely upgradable to 32 gigs, but there is only one SODIMM port. It does have a 10 gig copper port on the back. The interfaces on it are M.2 for its NVMe. It says 4K hardware encoding built in, which is nice. If you want to use this as a Plex server or Jellyfin, some type of media server, this could be a good option for that. On top of that, this does have an HDMI port on the back, 2 USB 3.2 USB Type A ports. That was a mouthful. It's also a 10 gig USB-C port. This can hold up to 8 NVMe SSDs at 8 terabytes apiece. So that's 64 terabytes of raw storage, all within this tiny little device, which is a lot of storage for such a small, compact little unit. It's not that small. I do like that it's a low power device. You're only going to use like 20 to 40 watts or so average. I think it can boost all the way up to 75 watts depending on the workload. There are 2 flavors of this F8 series. There's the F8 SSD, which is this bad boy, and the F8 SSD Plus. This one comes with the 4-core Intel N95 processor. The Plus model comes with an 8-core i3 processor. That same SSD Plus also comes with 16 gigs of DDR5 RAM, but really, that's the only difference between them. But here's the catch. Those processors only have enough PCIe lanes to provide each of the M.2 ports with a PCIe Gen 3 X1 speed. We can see right here on their website somewhere, where's it at? So we can see here that they're not hiding it or anything. It goes at 1,000 meg per second, which if you're using a full 10 gig connection, really kind of sucks transferring to and from this bad boy. I've only got a 1 gig network here locally at home. So TP-Link, if you're listening, hit me up. We gotta do some upgrades. On the note of that 10 gig connection, there's only one of them. So they're missing some features like link aggregation that they could take advantage of if there was a second Ethernet port here. Does it really matter if the limitations are at the SSD level? Let's plug this in and look at the operating system that comes on it, because TerraMaster has their own NAS OS, the TOS. This edition is TOS 6. I've never played with any of the TOS systems before, and it didn't really blow me away.
Later.
All right, I think that beep means it's ready. And I got a bad gateway. Let's try it again. That's promising. Here we are in TOS 6, TerraMaster's operating system for their NAS system. I mean, it works. I'll give them that. And it's snappy. I'll give them that too. So we've got our, main menu here with recent applications that we've used. We've got a file explorer, which is similar to a Windows file explorer, which I guess is kind of nice for familiarity. I feel that there could be a little more intuitive design here, but basic works, right? On top of that, or next to that, we've got our app menu, basically with all the apps that are installed. And talking about apps, they do have an app center where you can go and download specific apps made for this device that are authorized by TerraMaster. They're certified, I guess you could say. They've got a pretty decent little app store here. There's also a community app store, but keep in mind, the community apps aren't necessarily certified to work on this device or any TerraMaster device. They're not officially provided by TerraMaster, put it that way. But just be careful if you're going to come in here and start downloading apps willy-nilly from the community app store. Anyway, back to the main apps. They've got a lot of stuff in here like multimedia server. You can make a SQL database on your NAS, Nextcloud Portainer to manage Docker containers. This is interesting, and again, gonna get to why here in a little bit. NAS iSCSI Manager. Keep that in mind. Just remember that. We've got Jellyfin and Plex server as well. So these can be a perfect little media server, especially with its size. You can put it next to your Xbox or something in your entertainment area and stream directly to your TV as a media server. Moving on, the next option here is a backup option, which shows you how to set up this NAS as a backup for your devices within your network. Me, personally, would not use this as a backup device. And I'll tell you why. Longevity. When I think of backup media, I think of spinning disk drives. Low and slow are going to last a long time. NVMe's are expensive, although faster. Great for applications, great for caching, quick transfer of data. But if I'm backing up data just to have an extra copy of it so I can restore from if something happens, I don't need that on flash storage. I don't need that super quick and available at all times. If I'm going to restore, there's downtime already happening. That being said, this OS, TOS 6, is not built specifically for this NAS. I think it's used on all of their TerraMaster devices. So that's probably why a lot of these backup apps are in the store and available to be used on this device, because it's more of a universal application layer for all of their storage units. From there, we've got a control panel or settings menu, which is nice. We can go in and see our disk volume. This device has 8 NVMe ports on it, right? TerraMaster worked with me by providing this device for me to review and talk to you about, but didn't provide any storage. And I understand why. NVMe storage is not cheap. For example, a 1 terabyte NVMe, cheap ones on Amazon's $40-50. And since this can hold up to 64 terabytes of data or 8 terabyte NVMe drives, the cheapest ones of those are still $200 a pop. Look at this, a 990 Evo is $269. So $270 times 8 is way too much money for me to spend on a NAS. Fuck that. So I got some cheap, I thought I bought 512s, but I got 256 gig drives, proof of concept kind of thing. So essentially I've got 2 terabytes of raw storage on this box. When I created the storage pool, it created a T-RAID pool. So TerraMaster's version of RAID, I think. I'm only getting 1.5 terabytes of capacity here, which means 2 drives are reserved for system use. Honestly, I don't know. I'm pretty sure you can go back and change that. Obviously, it would erase all the drives and you would be stuck with a fresh install. And then finally, the last menu item here is the help menu. So let's take a look at a few things real quick. First off, I mentioned earlier that there's an iSCSI Manager app in here, which would come in handy for me to think of a really good way to use this, essentially as a caching platform in a traditional server infrastructure or another storage infrastructure, so that you've got your tiered storage, right? Data that you use often stays in flash storage so that you can retrieve it and work with it very quickly. And then as it is not used, it slowly falls off into slower, cheaper, more reliable storage. But you could plug in an external hard drive like the one I had here before to one of those USB ports on the back, and guess what? You got yourself a poor man's hybrid NAS. And that's exactly what I've done. So we can see here I've got a USB drive that at one time was a backup for a Proxmox cluster, and I went ahead and put this test folder here. We've got my shared drives here mapped. This is going to have a temp video I'd worked on before, Zima OS update video I released recently. You can check that out on the channel if you're interested. Let's move it to the F8 drive, which is on the SSD on the NAS itself. So this is 1.6 gig, and we're running right at gigabit speed, 100 meg a second, 110. If I wanted to go directly to the USB from my local machine, it should be the same speeds. Yeah, same speeds. So I'm gonna hit cancel on that. Now I'm moving it to a USB from NAS to USB direct connected. Hit OK. I was almost at a full gig a second because of the caching done on the NVMe's. So those are the speeds. I have a feeling if you got higher end NVMe drives, that cache speed would be faster, or stay longer to be able to transfer data from flash to non-flash. So the operating system is interesting. It's kind of basic, but that's really all you need. So what does it come down to here? Really, the key features are it's fast storage that's simplified, right? You've got traditional RAID options, 1, 5, RAID 6, plus TerraMaster's proprietary T-RAID for a mixed drive setup. It's clean. It's got a snappy desktop. I didn't feel any lag when I was using it in the operating system, so it could be very easy for beginners to use. This is pretty neat. I didn't know it could do this until I started looking into it more. Kind of like I'm doing here with an external USB drive plugged in. You can connect this to other TerraMaster NAS units to essentially use as additional storage. So that's a pretty neat little trick it's got up its sleeve. Some of the weaknesses though, I think the app ecosystem is pretty limited in comparison to other app stores out there. And older features like VirtualBox rely on outdated technology like Adobe Flash. While Docker support exists, occasional reboots may be needed for stability. Again, you can't connect directly to the F8 SSD via USB-C on a PC. It has to go over the network. It's not a DAS, it's a NAS. Direct attached storage, network attached storage. Two different things. So what are your thoughts on this little storage device, and what would you use it for? Is my idea for a server cache box a good idea? Is that something you would set up in your home lab? As far as flash storage being the future of home NAS devices, I don't think so. I think hybrid models are the key. It's got a wider use case, better compatibility, and gives you options for more longevity.